Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. William Gallagher. Our sponsors this time are Clean My Mac by MacPoor, Squarespace, Tempo and Nordstella. In just a little while, I'm going to be joined, as ever, by Wes Hilliard, and there is so much to ask him this time, since he now has a shiny new MacBook Neo. But first, we have a special guest. David Pogue has written a 600-page book about the first 50 years of Apple, and if you've not managed to hear him talk about it before, I think you've been avoiding podcasts and YouTube, haven't you, for at least a week. Don't avoid this one. I actually got to talk to him first. I didn't know this when we recorded it. He told me this is the very first interview he ever gave about this book. So you're going to hear how much he wanted to know if the book is just any good. And it is. I fully gushed at David about his book, but I did also have questions. A man's not going to get away with some of these things he says in the book until, actually, possibly he does.
Guess what? You are the very first person not involved with the book to read it and tell me what you think. So that means the world. I have no idea. I'm so close to it. Yeah. Absolutely no sense of whether it's good, whether it's structured well, so I did my best, but so that someone who knows stuff like you are giving it a thumbs up. So that means a lot.
Well, I thought I knew stuff. There's so much in there I didn't. You're actually frankly annoying. And there's one thing that's picked out in the highlights bit that I didn't really get from the book, and also I didn't know it. It's this thing about Newton saving Apple. So I want to make my first question and start right here is, David Pogue, thank you very much for coming on Apple Insider, but Newton saves Apple. Defend yourself.
Yeah, there's these bulleted items up in the front about things you might not have known, and that's one of them. It's in there if you read along, especially when we come to the discussion of ARM, which is this tiny British chip company that invented what we now know as the ARM processor that's in every MacBook, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, every single thing in the world. Billions and billions and billions run this type of processor, very low power, very high speed. And John Sculley, the much maligned John Sculley, CEO for 10 years, found this little company, his guys, and said, wow, this could be something. Let's invest in it. So he bought a big chunk of that company in the 90s. And then fast forward, the early 90s. And then fast forward a few years, the investment had appreciated something like 8,000% and was now worth $800 million at a time when Apple was almost broke. And without that money, Gil Amelio would never have been able to buy Next and bring Steve Jobs back. He literally sold that stock and used it to buy Steve Jobs and begin the second act of Apple.
Oh, I get it. I mean, I read the bits about ARM, and I'm thinking, well, yes, Apple made a great investment, but then it sold the stuff off later, but I didn't appreciate why. All right, okay.
I was just going to say, so I interviewed John Sculley for a day, and he's the one who made this argument, and I'm like, come on, dude, that's a little pat on the back. But then I dug into it, and he was right. I mean, they made a brilliant investment. I mean, it was nothing. It was $3 million or something at the time, but it expanded and multiplied manyfold.
Towards the back end of the book, you're talking about the people you spoke to, and one of the things that you said that kept coming up was so many of them said they would see these nonsense, fake stories about Apple that then get repeated and repeated. So is my perception that Apple blew it by going away from ARM one of those?
But Apple didn't go. What do you mean go away from ARM?
Well,
Apple,
it did sell off a massive. I mean, it owned much more at the start, and then.
You mean when Emilio sold the stock? Yeah. You could argue it either way. You could argue that he blew it, that it would be worth even more now if he'd hung on to it.
But
But you could
then,
also
yeah.
argue that he dug into that stash of emergency money right when Apple needed it most.
Are there any other famous Apple stories that you could put right?
Oh, so many. There's a great story about Steve Jobs when they were working on the iPod. He wanted it small, and so at one point they brought him a near final prototype, and they said, "Steve, this is as small as it goes. We've shrunk everything. We've squeezed all the space out of there." And he supposedly threw it into the fish tank. And as it sank, little bubbles drifted up. And he said, "See those air bubbles? That means there's air in there. Make it smaller." Great story. Never happened. Never
Oh,
happened. Um,
okay.
the story of, Steve Jobs haranguing you in an elevator and a total stranger and saying, "What do you do here?" And you say, "Well, Steve, I'm on the developer relations." And he says, "You're fired." That never happened either. Um, yeah, there's there's a long list, and they've been repeated so many times that they become lore, including in some very recent bestsellers about Steve Jobs. Let's just say that.
I just want to check something. You make it very clear in the book that Apple had no say in this, but they did help you get access to people, and the people you list you interviewed, it's everybody I could dream of interviewing for this, except I don't see Tim Cook's name in there. Did you not get him?
Did not get Tim Cook, which is ironic because I interviewed him after the book was out for a story on CBS Sunday Morning. Um, so he did ultimately agree to an interview, but not in time for the book. I don't know what that's about. There was a long time when Apple PR's line to me was, "We don't celebrate the past. We focus on the future." Um, which could be, a noble thing. We don't spend resources and energy looking backward. And it could also just be a matter of practicality. We don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the resources. We have smart Siri to work on, and the next iPhone. We're busy. But in any case, that was, I think, the argument there. Um, it was sort of a strange dance with Apple, actually. The whole thing. They do not give interviews with current executives, designers, and engineers to journalists as a rule. They just don't, unless they have some PR purpose that they're, they'll give Craig Federighi to Joanna Stern of the Wall Street Journal, for example, when to try to put out the fire of the AI uh, issue. And here I was saying I wanted to interview everyone. So for a long time, I sensed that they were very torn about how much help to give me. I mean, it's 6 months of me begging them, and but they knew that this was not going to be something that they would get to see before it was published. So I think I mean, any big company has a PR team that tries to protect the image of the company, and Apple in particular. So um, I can see why they would be nervous about giving interviews to somebody. But on the other hand, I have been writing about this company for 40 years, so they kind of know. I mean, I'm fundamentally a fan of Apple. I like the idea of beauty and simplicity and magic. So they knew it wasn't going to be a hatchet job. Um, but at the same time, it was quite a dance, and I think it went down, from my perspective, as well as it could have gone down. In that they did offer me interviews, they did offer me access to their archivist, and didn't get the book before it was done.
Cool. But you're saying they're quite an Apple fan. I see you as a technology writer. But I was wondering why you would write about 50 years of Apple and not say, wasn't it last year was the 50th anniversary of Microsoft? Did that not appeal to you at all?
Um, I think actually Microsoft was founded in 1979, I think. So there's still time for me to do
Oh, right. Get on that.
that. We'll see how this one does. But no, I mean, mainly, I mean, I wrote for Macworld for 13 years. I wrote, Macs for Dummies. I wrote, I started the Missing Manual series. So iPhone, the Missing Manual, Mac OS, the Missing Manual, GarageBand, iPhoto, iMovie. So, I really, really, really know my Apple stuff.
Well, my mind's going in two different directions here. Let me leap on that then, because I actually lost count looking through the list of books you've written. But I think this is the only history one you've written. Is that right?
That is right. And only the second sort of nonfiction. I mean, other than the how-to books, this is only the second nonfiction book.
How did you find it, the process different from all of the missing manuals?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. This book just about killed me. It was the most stress you can possibly imagine because, first of all, there was an immovable date.
Yeah.
So the anniversary is April 1st, 2026, and that's not moving. If I get busy, if I get sick, that's not moving. Second of all, I had many different contingencies that all had their own agendas. In other words, the people I was interviewing, many of them were almost desperate in the way they wanted the story told. A lot of these old guys, I was the last big journalist, might be the last big journalist to come by. I mean, two of these guys have died since I talked to them, So, and two more have dementia, and I talked to them probably the last time they got to talk about their lives and their work. So there's tremendous pressure to do the stories right, told by these people who have changed the world in their ways. At the same time, what do you do when their stories conflict?
Mm.
And they often do. And that's been a problem in previous Apple books too. I read them all. And again, there's a lot wrong. And early on, I said, this book is not going to have mistakes. And I would talk to some of these executives and former executives, and the really smart ones, like Phil Schiller and Chris Espinosa. Chris Espinosa is the only person who's been at Apple for all 50 years. He started when he was 14. He's still there. And they chuckled warmly and they said, "Oh, David, there's going to be mistakes. There would have to be. I mean, you put four of us old Apple people in a room to tell about an event, and you'll get six different renditions. I mean, it's ancient history. It's 50 years ago. Memories are infallible. All you can do is your best." So I will say I worked harder. I hired a researcher to help me go through the archives. Unbelievable stuff. You go through this microfilms and ancient publications, and so I worked harder to make it. So there's the accuracy thing. There was the do right by the storytellers thing. There was the deadline thing, and there was I wanted to tell stories that haven't been told before. The same stories, as we've mentioned, keep getting recycled in the Apple articles and the books. And I really wanted, first of all, not to repeat anything unless it's really important. The Jobs Scully battle that got Jobs kicked out of the company, that kind of thing you got to tell. But I also wanted to tell a lot of inside backstories, which, as you know, there's a lot of them in this book.
On this timeline, I like the fact that you're comprehensive, but you don't speculate. So the Apple Intelligence section towards the end of it, I mean, if I say it's straight, that sounds almost insulting, like it's boring, but I mean, it's non-judgmental. It lays out what happened when. Was there ever a temptation, given the rest of your journalism background, to speculate, to draw conclusions that weren't described to you?
That's so you touched on something else that really consumed me is whose voice is this? Am I Am I a complete outsider telling things neutrally? Um, Most of the books about Apple have been written by business reporters, and they tend to focus on the colorful characters, like the people and the backstabbing, and Steve Jobs had an illegitimate daughter, and salacious details. I knew this wasn't going to be that. As you probably detected, there's a lot more about the technologies and the products in this book than about the corporate infighting within the boardroom. Um, and at the same time, I didn't want to be, a gushy fanboy. So what I chose to do is just be a reporter. So if they screw up, describe the screw up, describe the fallout from the media, how it impacted sales, how it impacted their reputation. But I'm not going to be the one who draws the conclusion. The reader's going to draw the conclusion.
Um, I read in the book that actually this kind of wasn't your idea. Was it your wife's, your partner's, about 10 years ago or something?
Yeah, so in 2024, it was the Mac's 40th birthday, fourth anniversary, and there's this wonderful outfit in Mountain View, California, called the Computer History Museum. Where are you, by the way, William?
I'm in Birmingham in the UK.
Oh, you are? Okay. You sound like you're from the UK, but I didn't know if you moved. Um, there's this Computer History Museum is fantastic, and they put on an event to celebrate the Mac's 40th anniversary. They asked if I would MC this event, and they brought back to the stage Bill Atkinson, Andy Hertzfeld, Steve Capps, Susan Kerr, who drew all the original icons and fonts. A whole bunch of people came back, and there were three conversations that I did with these folks, and the audience, it was sold out. It was packed. It was like Woodstock meets a love fest. I mean, it was hilarious, the stories they told, and there was PTSD, as they told about Steve Jobs driving them like a slave driver to complete this thing. This thing had no memory, and they had no time to do it, and yet they had to change the world with it. It was an unforgettable night. It was filled with, the front row is full of Apple executives, current executives. So I owed my publisher the second book of a two-book deal. And I'd been working on a book that's about space, and I was really excited about it. My wife was never excited about it. Nikki is her name. And so one day, a few weeks after this Computer History Museum thing, she shook me awake in the middle of the night. She goes, David, I have a much better idea for your second book. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she goes, you should do a book about Apple's first 50 years. That'll be, you know the subject. You're the perfect person to do it. And I'm like, Nikki, dude, that's past. You missed it. Go back to sleep. I literally shut her down. And then in the morning, I'm like, really? Well, wait, when was Apple founded? And I looked it up, and it was 2026. It was 2 years away. The perfect time to write a book. And you know how when something comes to you in a dream or in half sleep, you're not really sure if it's a good idea or not? It just seems that way. So I called my publisher and described this idea, and she's like, oh yeah, kill the space book, do this. So it was very much my wife's idea. And, she's really good at that stuff. Among other things, it meant that I got to, spend a year or two interviewing really towering, cool figures that she knew I'd admired for a long time. She's done this before. There's a guy from Birmingham named Jeff Lynne. He started a rock group called Electric Light Orchestra. Yeah. And when I was growing up as a teenager, I loved ELO, man. It's a rock band with a string orchestra. So unique sound, and I love that as a young burgeoning music major. And then the band broke up. And 30 years later, Jeff Lynne decided to put the band back together and start a tour. So he's going to tour the United States. And I told my wife, Nikki, like, oh, you got to go with me. We got to go to Madison Square Garden and see this. And she said, why are you just going to see him? Why don't you pitch your producers at CBS News on doing a story about him, and then you'll get to meet him? I mean, it's totally abusing my privilege, but I did. I pitched it, and the producer said, yeah, that would be a good story. And so I got to spend a day with Jeff Lynne, and I did this profile. So, yeah, so there's a certain amount of self-interest in there.
Does Nikki get paid for all of this?
What do you mean? She gets to live with this genius-loving, funny, handsome guy.
Anyway, forgive me, my mind's all over the place because there's so much to ask you. But one thing you made me think of there is my first book. I made a mistake and I interviewed the major person first, and then she died. And I thought if I'd interviewed her last, I would have been able to ask so much better questions. How much back and forth were you able to do with these amazing people you interviewed?
A lot. That's the other thing. When we say interview, I mean, we're talking about the beginning of these relationships. I mean, once I interviewed someone, they were on my speed dial. They were on my email list. And oh my gosh. So Bill Atkinson, who wrote the original graphic interface software for the Mac, I spent an entire day with him at his house. And then every time he thought of another story, he would call me up, and I would quickly turn on the recorder and record it. Can I tell my favorite story from the entire book, since we're talking about Bill Atkinson? So as people may know, as your listeners may know, there was a moment in 1979 when Apple got the chance to visit Xerox PARC, the Palo Alto Research Center PARC, where they had developed crude early versions of what we now know as the graphic interface: menus, windows, the mouse. I mean, it was a weird. The mouse was a sharp-edged acrylic rectangle with 3 buttons. I mean, it was very prototypey. But Steve Jobs took a crew over there and said, "Oh my God, this is the future. This is the future of computing. Rip up everything else we're doing. We're going to do this." And he said, "Bill Atkinson, recreate all this, everything you saw there, but make it better." So Bill Atkinson did. He worked for weeks in particular on this one thing he'd seen at Xerox PARC, which is overlapping windows. So windows acted on the screen like sheets of paper that you could overlap, drag one on top of another. But in those days, the processing power and the memory were so puny, it was really hard to do. Like when you moved away the upper window, the closer window, instead of revealing the contents of the window behind it, it would leave this blank rectangle, or worse, flicker. And so he could not figure out how Xerox PARC had done it, because you have so little memory. You can't store the images of 6 different windows, some of which are hidden. So he finally came up with this really elaborate scheme where he memorizes the coordinates of the part of each window that is obscured by a front window, and he stores the bitmap of what would have been there off the screen. Anyway, very complicated, very technical, but he did it. And Jobs was like, "You're a freaking genius. You did it. That is so cool." So now you could drag windows in front of each other. Anyway, and people know that part of the story. But the great part of the story that Atkinson called me one day to say, "I forgot to tell you," a few weeks later, he was at a nudist colony. And he was into that at the time. He was sitting in a hot tub at a nudist camp where you're required not to wear clothes. And in comes this guy who climbs into the tub with him and says, "Hey, you're that Bill Atkinson from that little startup Apple." He goes, "Yeah, yes, I am." He goes, "Hi, I'm William Withers from IBM, from Xerox PARC. I heard that you solved the overlapping windows problem." And Atkinson said, "Yeah, I don't know how you guys did it. It took me weeks to figure that out." And the guy goes, "No, we never solved it. You did." He had misremembered. Bill Atkinson misremembered seeing that. He had never seen that because it was too hard, but he managed to do it. But anyway, so end of sidebar. To answer your question, yes, people stayed in touch, and in particular, Steve Wozniak was amazing. He was just on call 24/7. I could email him questions or clarifications, and he would just immediately write back. I mean, this guy is so busy, and also Chris Espinosa, the guy who's been there for 50 years, he went so far beyond the Call of Duty. Like when I interviewed people, they would say, so we go across the street to Bandley 4, or we went to had this big meeting in the city center building. And I didn't know what these buildings were. I didn't know how close they are or what that means. I wanted readers to have a sense of place. And so I'm like, can you explain, like, I don't get, where was the Mac team? Where was the iPhone built? So he made me a map. He like hand labeled all these buildings and circled things. And I wound up being so inspired by that map that Espinosa made for me that it's now the frontispiece of the book. I made a fancier version, and it's the 2-page spread. When you open the book, every important building is on there, including the different headquarters.
I think that was actually the first, I didn't know that moment in the book, because I knew Manly in the numbers, but I didn't know it was in order of them taking over. I just thought it was down the street for it. Yeah, okay.
And it's amazing, isn't it, that 50 years, this entire company's entire history fits within a 2-mile radius. And they've never moved more than 2 miles from where they began.
Yeah, they should get out more, really, shouldn't they? Mixed with this, one thing, almost slicing on to very close to the front, you quote a woman, nuts, I blanked on the name, I will fix that, saying that she's worked at Apple, only ever worked at 5 companies that were all called Apple. I loved that line. I thought it set off the book really well. Do you still see anything of what you learned of the original Apple in today's version of it?
That's such a profound question. And in fact, I will say every single interview I concluded with that question. What through lines are there? What things have never changed? And the most interesting answer is that the mission has never changed. So Samsung started out as a dried fish company. Nokia began as a paper mill. Apple started out simplifying complex technology in order to sell it to the masses. And that is exactly what they still do. So that part of it has never changed. And with, I might add, insane focus. Like, how many products does Samsung sell? They sell dishwashers and dryers and paper shredders. And how many products does Sony sell? Audio and video and computers. Apple's entire product line could fit on a boardroom table right now. It's really astonishingly focused, and that was a Steve Jobs thing. So a lot of the characteristics that Steve Jobs established, obsessing over tiny details, worrying about even the aesthetics of internal components that no one will see. I thought that, a lot of people think that's super weird. I thought it was super weird. Nobody cares about the layout of the circuit board. But I interviewed Johnny Ive and I asked him about that. And he said, you feel care, even if you can't see it. And I think what he means is if somebody sweats over the perfection of every single component, like overall, it gives the thing a vibe of having been sweated over. It makes you feel good about the end result. So I think that design stuff has never changed. The Mac was designed, this whole computer, 15 engineers. 15 engineers. Can you imagine Apple coming up with a new product today with 15 people? The answer is no. But there is a through line of small teams working in isolation. The iPhone is a great example. The iMac is a great example. The iPod. These were all small teams, often working in a separate building without corporate meddling, and they come up with great work. There are some things that are not through lines. There are, the Tim Cook era has introduced some values and some themes that were not there during the Steve era. Some of them are admirable. He's much more into inclusion and charity and sustainability. Those have become corporate goals that Steve Jobs wasn't really worrying about when he was just trying to build the company. But an amazing number of people would say that this business of over-the-top obsession over details and knowing when to leave out features instead of put them in, small teams, excellence, going the extra mile, that stuff is still there. It's a tough place to work. People burn out. A lot of people can't stand it. They leave. The ones who buy into this philosophy of excellence and going the extra mile, they tend to stay for decades. I mean, if you look at the executive staff right now, those guys have been there 20, 30, 40 years. And a couple of people came from other companies, and they say, I've worked around Silicon Valley. There is nothing like working inside of Apple. I mean, just this culture of polish and getting it right is not something you hear at other companies. I'll give you one. I know there's a long answer, but I'll give you one more example. Johnny Ives said something that hasn't left my head. He said, so I asked him, there's so much back and forth of workers in Silicon Valley. Why don't people just recreate the Apple formula at another company? How come there hasn't been a company with as many world-changing hits as Apple? And he said, at Apple, our goal is to make the best blank in the world, the best phone in the world, the best laptop in the world. That's not the goal of other companies. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You don't think Google says the Pixel is the finest smartphone in the world? No, they never claim that. Like, other companies just don't have that as the goal. They have many other priorities, but like making the best blank in the world is not how they start out building a product. So I thought that was interesting.
It is, except that feels that's something Apple is able to do now because it has all of this money. But isn't the argument that it was always like that, even when it didn't? So
that is the argument, and that is one of the things I had to tackle in the book was Steve Jobs, and you hear about the way he would abuse his lieutenants and his workers. I mean, just rip them apart. They'd stay up all night coming up with some new feature or software algorithm, and he'd throw it on the floor and he'd say, "This is shit. I would be embarrassed to ship this." And he would destroy people. He drove them so hard, people got sick all the time. I mean, the marriages, the relationships that fell apart, it was brutal. And yet, there are two ways of looking at that. And as I interviewed these people, two things came out. One was, yeah, he was abusive. He was a cruel person. And as Andy Hertzfeld said, it was more of a bug, not a feature. Like, he could have gotten the same results without ripping people apart. The other way of looking at it is that he squeezed from these people more productivity, creativity, and genius than they would have been in their comfort zone. So he literally drove people to do their best work. And I think that's the answer to the question. So when they didn't have money, when they didn't have resources, what they had was people who were pressed to do astonishingly genius creative work that overcame the lack of resources. And let's remember, Steve Jobs really didn't have any hits during his first years at Apple, right? So the Lisa was a failure. The Macintosh was essentially a failure. It trickled along, but it did not sell in the early days. And it wasn't until he came back after 11 years away that he came up with the iMac and then the iPod and the iPhone and so on. So at that point, John Sculley had made the company 10 times bigger, and now they did have some resources.
Got to throw something back at you. You talked about polish, obsession, dedication. Isn't that a description of the writing of the book?
Well, thank you. I just felt like there were we were talking about the different audiences who were expecting things from this book. The people I interviewed wanted the record straight. And then I'm thinking about the readers. So readers like you and your podcast listeners know a lot of stuff about Apple. So I'm thinking about that audience. There has to be enough there to keep people interested, to keep value in the book from people who know the broad outlines of the stories. And then there's people who don't know anything about Apple. I have to worry about, like, do I have to explain megahertz? Do I have to explain what a megabyte of memory means? And, what's the technical level of the book? So there are all these different. What about Apple haters? How do I write the book so that Apple haters will say, well, he did a fair job. Like he was right. He didn't gush. He didn't slam them. Apple fanboys. What about them? So all these people have different interests in this book. And so I felt like it was threading a needle through a needle through a needle. And that was what made it tough.
Two very last quick things then. One, what does Nikki think of the book?
She's on page 490 of the 600 pages book. What's great is that I will hear her chuckle. I also find the book, if I may say so, entertaining. There's a lot of good humor in there. And I love hearing her chuckle over there on the couch. I'm like, what? And she said, oh, that part about Bill Atkinson naked in the hot tub. Oh yeah. So she gives it a thumbs up.
As well as the book, you've resumed your Pogue's Post writings. Is that just for the kind of launch period, or are you planning to keep that going?
Planning to keep that going. Nikki is a former high-tech PR representative herself. She used to represent, Airbnb and Etsy and companies like that. So she has been really useful in helping promote the book. She knows a lot about a lot. She's even represented book authors in the past, trying to launch their books. And she's noticed that a lot of prominent authors start a Substack to describe sort of behind the scenes in making a book. And then when it's time to announce their book tour, they've got a natural built-in audience to market that to. And so I decided, and also I work for CBS News. I don't know if over there in the UK you're hearing about some of the news over here regarding the federal government's interest in steering news coverage.
I'm ex-BBC, so very, very twitchy about all of this. Yes.
You're twitchy.
Yes. Okay.
So there's concern about CBS News. I don't really think it's anything long-term to worry about, but it's good to have a secondary outlet for your energies just in case. So so I've started writing a column again, and I'm about 2.5 months into it. I've been posting twice a week and really loving it. Man, I miss writing. I wrote a weekly tech column for the New York Times for 13 years, and then I've been doing just TV stuff since then. And so I really miss it. It's super gratifying. Also Nikki's idea, and maybe 1 out of every 4 or 5 posts is about the book. I wrote about what it's like to do. I read my own book for the audio version. I was the narrator for the audiobook of this book. It took 12 days to do. Bizarrely exhausting. Like, when have you ever actually sat and read out loud for 4 hours? Probably never. And it turns out it's quite grueling. So I've been doing it partly to promote the book, get people excited about the book, and partly because I love writing and I feel like I'm back on the game.
This episode is brought to you by Clean My Mac by MacBook. I've talked about this often, and it's running right now on both my Mac Studio and my MacBook Pro, but I'm thinking that maybe I've not considered what it means as much as I have what it does. So what it does, just to pick one thing, is keep me running out of storage space. Just yesterday, Final Cut Pro was just beach balling whenever I was doing the simplest thing, and it turned out to be solely because I was down to, half a gigabyte free space. I've no idea how I got that low. And I don't have to care because I ran Clear My Mac. It immediately found gigabytes of files like duplicates. How do I keep duplicating files? And system caches that were weirdly huge. It found them. It told me. I said, yep, off you go. And I was right back in Final Cut Pro working on what I need. So Clear My Mac does that. It actually does the same thing for my overstuffed iCloud storage. But the point of it, I now realise, is not the finding and deleting files. It's that business of how I was able to so quickly get back to work. Clean My Mac is about getting rid of these interruptions to your work. It might do it in a dozen different ways, and I think I've relied practically on all of them at various times. But ultimately, it's that single mission, is that the word? This purpose, the single purpose of keeping us working. It does this for me, and it can do it for you. Get tidy today. Try 7 days free and use my code AppleInsider20 for 20% off at cleanmy.com. That's CLNMY, cleanmy, CLNMY.com/AppleInsider. And note there that Apple Insider must be in all uppercase. So that's CLNMY.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Clean My Mac by MacPaw for supporting the Apple Insider podcast, but also for helping me finish that video edit. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. I think it's just a little bit likely that you've already heard of Squarespace because so many websites are based on it, so many people have enthused about it for so long. But what you may not know until you try it is that Squarespace is actually an entire platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. So not just a website, your whole online presence. And this is true whether you're just starting out, whether you're growing and scaling your business, or actually whether, like me, you are continually just trying to do the web better. Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. Squarespace makes it easy to gather together, for instance, well, in my case, all of the teaching videos. I made so many of them during COVID, but I can reuse them right now, right there on my website. Squarespace makes it easy to upload and organize videos like that, and then even monetize that content by adding a paywall. But then there's also email campaigns you or I could be using to promote our business or ourselves. There are analytics that, like all analytics, they tell you what is and what isn't getting read, but they tell you so easily, so quickly that you'll actually use the information. Go to squarespace.com/AppleInsider. That's all caps, Apple Insider, to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the coupon code AppleInsider. And again, that's uppercase. So squarespace.com/AppleInsider and then the coupon code AppleInsider. And thank you to Squarespace for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. Apple, the first 50 years, is now on sale in the US, and it'll be out here where I am in the UK on March 25. I should say also, there's more from David in this week's Apple Insider Plus, which is about how none of us ever read computer manuals anymore. I used to write them, and I don't read any, partly because there aren't any anymore, but maybe there should be. So that's David, Wes and I in Apple Insider Plus later. And I should also say, if you're not already signed up to hear that ad-free and extended version of the podcast, you can join me through Patreon or Apple Podcast subscriptions. But now, Wes has been patiently listening to David and I talking. Wes, are you sold? Will you be buying his book?
Oh, William, I joined the midnight queue for the release, and I did go buy it. It was available at our Barnes & Noble. So, yeah, I currently have it. Very pretty white dust cover.
Oh, because it's out in the States ahead, for some reason, a couple of weeks ahead of the UK. All right, I'm not jealous because I read a galley proof of it before. But he mentioned that Nikki's like 490 pages in. Have you read it all? What do you think?
That's as much as I've read is The title, yes.
Okay. It does look beautifully produced. The galley I saw was, of course, a PDF for it, so I'm looking forward to seeing it in the flesh. But speaking of looking forward to things, I know this is kind of a side point, but you are talking to us from a new place, aren't you?
Yes, so I want to go ahead and say, forewarning, I might sound different, and I might sound not so great, because I am in an empty house. The office behind me is empty. It's hardwood floors and drywall with nothing in it. So, of course, I am echoing like crazy. So I'm currently under a blanket in front of a microphone, hoping that the microphone is not picking up every little bounce back. So if William's going to do his best, and you guys got that excellent interview at the front, if this is for some reason for you unbearable, if this just comes through poorly, then please feel free. You have my permission to skip ahead to the after show where David joins us again. So hopefully this isn't too bad, but we do have some show to get to today anyway.
Many, many things to talk about, including the fact that basically you're in a blanket fort, aren't you? That's what you've got there. It's a little hard to think. It took adult conversations there when my head is full of community, Troy and Abed, and they're blanket. Yeah, I'm going too far down the line there. I hope you're at least nice and warm over there in your new place. There's always something I kind of store up to ask you, because it's a technical thing that I know you know better than me, but in this case, it's also actually a sports thing, and I don't think you're much more of a sports person than I am, but you have things like Apple Vision Pro. I understand, because you can't seem to escape this, that F1, not the film, but the real brum brum racy car thing, has begun this week. Have you been watching? Are you hooked? Is it great?
So I'll start by saying that I was really into racing as a kid. I enjoyed NASCAR with my family. I grew up in the perfect time frame to be 12 and enjoy Fast and Furious, played the Need for Speed games, and just had this car culture kid in my life who made me obsessed. So I was always into this kind of stuff. Even though I'm not too much of a gearhead, I can't tell you anything about how an engine works or how a car is put together. I can kind of tell you what a brand is when it's driving by, but I've always enjoyed it. And so, like, I love Gran Turismo, the video game, and I really love the F1 movie. And that movie helped kind of reignite this love of this whole industry. And I'd never watched F1 before, but Apple's making it accessible. So I actually picked up the Drive to Survive thing that Netflix did and watched. I've not watched all of it yet, but I've got through like episode 6 in time to watch the Melbourne race that happened on, I think, Friday night or Saturday.
Okay. Sorry, my mind's just thinking, is it actually out in the UK? I should look into that. Is it only American stuff? It's got to be worldwide, isn't it? Because F1 is worldwide.
Well, Apple only has the distribution rights in the United States, and Sky TV still does the rest of the world. And the rights apparently are very, very strict, to the point that Apple has like extra geotagging layers over top of its stream to make sure even a VPN won't let you watch it.
That actually makes me feel less impressed that I've managed to miss it, because I don't have Sky for it. Oh, okay. But I also, there's a bit, I'm a little bit tempted to watch it if I could, just a bit, to see what it's like and things. I'm not clear. Are you able to watch this on Apple Vision Pro, or is it?
Yeah, so you can watch it anywhere. It's in the Apple TV app. There's also the multi-view program, which on different devices you get different numbers of windows, up to, I believe, 5 or 6 on Apple Vision Pro. The only problem I had with Vision Pro was you can't move the windows. They're in a 16:9 rectangle no matter what you do. I feel like Apple lost the opportunity here to have an update to make it to where you could just have a bunch of windows full-sized floating around your head. But overall, it was enjoyable. I watched most of it through the Apple TV in the living room, and the picture quality was amazing. The race went really quick. I'm used to NASCAR where it's 500 laps of the same thing over and over again, but I don't know if it's just because of the beginning of the season, or if Drive to Survive helped hyped it up. But it was a very exciting, fun race to watch.
So later in the season, they're low on fuel. They take longer. That's not it. This episode is brought to you by Tempo. fresh, balanced meals that are delivered to your door. Maria Sharapova swears by them. But you haven't got her, you've got me. I'm very similar, actually, apart from, the tennis, the athleticism, and the way I'm reasonably sure she doesn't spend 15 hours a day typing. But tempo is still, for me, for her, and for you. Because I will bet money that you are rushing around all week, and that when you are cooking, meal preparation, they are the first things to go. And losing them means losing any chance of healthy eating, except Tempo provides these healthy meals that you can heat in 2 minutes. You don't have to default to snacks or, takeaways every night. Tempo delivers nutrient-packed meals that are already cooked. It delivers fresh, chef-crafted and dietitian-approved meals right to your door. So whether it's for lunch or it's for dinner, the portions are just right. And this is real food. It's real food in 20 new recipes every week. For a limited time, Tempo is offering listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/AppleInsider. That's tempomeals.com/AppleInsider for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/AppleInsider. Rules and restrictions may apply, and thank you to Tempo for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. This episode is brought to you by Nordstella. Nordstella is a threat exposure management platform for businesses. So it detects cyber threats against your company, and it helps you take control before those escalate. Nordstella monitors the dark web. It can uncover targeted attacks against your firm, your brand, or your executives. Its attack surface management finds external vulnerabilities before attackers exploit them. For C-level managers, it provides faster detection, it provides prioritization, it offers real-time visibility of risks, plus it also strengthens your firm's compliance posture. Then, for your company's security teams, Nordstella provides contextualized insights, it can track adversaries, and it can provide malware logs. And then, for your whole company, using Nordstella means safeguarding employees, yes, but also customers from phishing, from identity abuse, or account takeovers. Made by the same team behind NordVPN, Nordstella is about proactive protection. Do not wait until your company's data is already for sale on the dark web. Protect your business today with Nordstella. Nordstella has flexible plans that scale with your business size, and right now you can unlock a 10% discount on Nordstella with the coupon code NordAppleInsider-10-Nordstella, or just mention Apple Insider to Nordstella. And thank you to Nordstella for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. You're kidding about NASCAR, weren't you? It's not really that long, is it? See, I'll believe anything.
It feels longer. Maybe especially when I watched it as a child, it felt infinite. But right. I can't remember. But it feels like it went for hours and hours, whereas this was like a 2-hour in-and-out race. I believe it started around 11 p.m. our time and might have ended around 1 or 2. And then that was like daylight savings or something. So it got all messed up. But it wasn't that. It didn't feel long, which was interesting. Right. And the reason why this race was chaotic, and we can move on from F1, is because they've completely changed the cars this year. They're relying more on electric, and some of the cars just failed early on in the race. So by like mid-race point, like there 5 or 6 of the drivers were just did not finish. So, and then the fight for the lead was really exciting to watch because there was a lot of trade-off between Mercedes and I can't remember the see, this is how much I am into the sport. I enjoy viewing it, I enjoy the drama, but I can't name everyone. I think it must have been Ferrari and Mercedes, but someone's going to tell me I'm wrong. So
you're wrong. I don't know, but I'll just offer that. You say we can move on from F1, but you're genuinely making me very nearly interested. But okay, things that are interesting. There are other things going on, or rather not going on. I didn't think we were going to hear anything about the HomeHub for a while, but this week we have been hearing more about it, specifically that we're not going to get it for a while, that it's been delayed. But I understand, not because it isn't ready, but because Siri isn't ready. And I know we're going to get... Hang on, all my devices are responding. find it a little bit resentful. I am resenting, rather, that Siri responds very quickly when I don't ask it to. But I have recently found it's worse than ever. If I want to set a timer on my watch, I have to do it twice. The first one will not catch it. It responds, it reacts, it doesn't do it. So they're making Siri worse. I am unsurprised that anything depending on it is delayed. But do we know to when? Is that likely?
So this has gotten weird. Kosutami is a leaker that's been around for years at this point. It's one of the last of the guard from the 2020 era that still proactively leaks Apple information. Right. They were active around the same time as like Love to Dream, and back when John Prosser was still actually leaking things that happened. So they got on this kick recently, and they're trying to vague post, and I believe their first language is not English, so they're vague posting on top of a odd translation layer. And so it's coming through very jumbled, and I think it's on purpose. But they're talking about a MagSafe home. What do they call it? It's not HomeHub. That's our word, but they're calling it a home device anyway of some kind. And home. I can't think of it. Anyway, they mentioned MagSafe. They mentioned the doorbell will ring it. All things we've heard before. I think the only thing that we heard that was new was that the interface on a next-gen HomePod might have a watchOS-like elements with round icons. And I guess that means it would also be on the HomeHub, which we know will have widgets and standby-like features. Mark Gurman jumped on this train, which Kosutami kind of started and shared, this is not coming until the fall, because of the quote-unquote delays around Apple Intelligence.
Right. So my mind's back on, you used a term I'd never heard before, vague post. Is that a thing, or is it just not as cool as saying rubbish post?
It's a social media thing, and it's kind of become a plague because... Right. And it's stupid that there's drama around it in the first place, because I just don't care. But apparently there's this method of posting where you just say the most vague possible thing, and in order to get people to engage with it and ask what you're talking about, like someone will post, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And right. They could be talking about a sporting event. They could be talking about a war. They could be talking about stubbing their toe. You don't know. Okay. Yes, I didn't know the term, but I've seen the type, and I've learned to ignore them. Okay. But one thing you mentioned there, I'm not sure, MagSafe. We expected to mount the HomeHub to our iPhone charger or something. I don't believe that. Well, so it might actually be that mechanism, because it can deliver 25 watts of power now. It's pretty powerful. Okay. So I could see this device, because we already know it's going to be a cheap little tablet, cheap being $200 to $300, that you carry around, and each family member might have one, or there might be at least two to a household anyway. And you carry it around, and you snap it into different objects, like a speaker or a articulating arm or a wall mount, and it becomes a hub for whatever you need, recipes in the kitchen or home controls in the living room. And the mechanism here might be MagSafe, which I think makes sense, because power. You need to keep it charged. Yeah. So obviously no data there, but MagSafe has the ability to transmit information, just like if you remember, if you had a iPhone case that has MagSafe in it and attach it to an iPhone, the indicator that you've attached something magnetic to it is the color of the case, which is interesting. Yes, I hadn't thought of that. So now it'll be able to say, I'm a speaker, I'm a articulating arm, and it'll be able to change its interface based on what it is. Because, this is a bit of an aside, but that throws me back to the earliest days of the Mac, or even to the late 90s possibly, when About This Mac was not About This Mac. It was about this Mac SE30, whatever. It was more specific than that, because the OS identified the Mac and included that information in places there, which always just
somehow cute, and it was a shame it was went. But okay, I also didn't realise that MagSafe carried data, even though I should have done, because I remember that bit.
Well, it's not like data. I believe it's doing some kind of handshake, almost NFC like. It's not over the magnet connection sending data. There's something else going on there. Right. It might be NFC.
Oh, okay.
But Kosu Tommy also mentioned, since you mentioned older Macs, that one of the stands might make it resemble an iMac. Is it the G4 that has an?
Oh yes,
the sunflower,
yeah, which is amazingly big when you see it in the first. And you see it in the ads, and it's so cute and it looks so well. But then a friend had one, and I was astounded how enormous this thing was. And he had it when it was current, so it's not like I'm looking back from slimmer, smaller models. But
right.
I still envied it. So there's that. Okay. All right, I'm a bit back and forth on this one then. The idea of slapping against your wall to be something and knocking against a speaker something else, I don't know, somehow that doesn't appeal, but the idea of it looking good, yeah, I'm obviously into visuals this time. But speaking of visuals, can we get to the important thing, the thing that's come out now, the fact that you have, unfortunately, the wrong colour MacBook Neo, don't you?
Well, I don't know what color to call it, because they call it citrus, which is silly. It's an enigma, William. I photographed this thing yesterday, and depending on which photo you look at, it is all the citrus fruits. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's orange. It's crazy. Like it even came out gold a couple of times. It's not that it has iridescent paint. That's not what I'm saying. It's just the way they've colored this aluminum, the light affects it dramatically. So dimmer environments, you'll have a very specific, more color, like orange color. But I had several shots that was silhouetted by the sun, where it was very starkly like a lime green.
Wow!
So it's really interesting how much range it has, and I would like to see this kind of thing done. Maybe it's just the nature of the color they chose, because on the color spectrum, yellow, green, orange obviously are all touching, so it's very easy for you to wave through that range, but still it's impressive.
It's just not blue though, so what can you do?
The blue though is basically midnight, which is basically black or gray, and I really wanted something fun to photograph, and I think I made the right choice.
You photograph it. I've seen your photographs, and they are gorgeous. I'm sure we'll be seeing them in AppleInsider. But have you actually used it yet? Is it that new?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of it. So I took the photos, and then I downloaded Pixelmator Pro, and then I immediately switched back to my iPad Pro to edit them. So this is going to be an interesting computer to test, because I need to get out of my pro user mindset. This is not that computer. Pixelmator Pro can run on it. That's not what I'm saying. But shoving 50 4K-ish files into a layered stack to edit them layer by layer and export them, I'm sure someone out there is going to tell me that's the wrong way to do it. That's how I do it.
It's the wrong way to do it.
I don't want to create individual edit files, projects for each photo. That would be insane.
Right.
And then Photomator is fine, but anyway, I just like Pixelmator and how this works. Doing that on the MacBook Neo was not going to happen. It just kind of slowed to a crawl. Editing one photo, great. But you know what, William? Photomator on the MacBook Neo, that is what I should be using. I should probably not be using Pixelmator Pro on the MacBook Neo. But yes, this device is really cool in the fact that I bought a 14-inch MacBook Pro back in the day because I like the form factor.
Yeah.
I like a good laptop. I like a good clicky keyboard. This thing was a good throwback to that. It's a good typing experience. I really just, I don't know, I got into the flow of going through the different settings and things, downloading the updates. There's no Touch ID, but I immediately clicked on the Apple Watch thing, and I've been just using that without any issue. Yeah, it's a neat little device.
You said you got to get out of the Pro mindset. I was actually wondering if you need to get out of the iPad mindset.
I know how to use a Mac, William. It's just, you know what though? I will say this, and you're going to be mad at me. One of the reasons why I wanted to get back to the iPad to edit the photos. some of it was obviously, yes, performance-wise, I'm going to run into some bottlenecks. But, man, the saving workflow is so annoyingly bad on Mac. I hate it so much.
Okay, you're right. I'm mad at you, but more confused.
Okay. I don't want to get too esoteric here because this is not a visual podcast, but you you hit export. First off, it gives you a million options in Mac versus on iPad, I get to hit an export button and it just goes to an export modal where I choose the export file type, resolution, and hit save. And it opens a files modal to let me select where that file is going to get saved. That workflow is perfect. It's beautiful. It's easy to read the interface. It's easy to see where all the files are. In Mac, the default is to open a modal that has basically a folder picker drop-down menu and an arrow next to it that lets you change the modal into a full-size Finder view, but then it defaults to the, I forget, the table view or whatever, the one where or the rows view.
List view.
And that is... Yeah, the list view, it's so hard to read, so I'll need to go in and configure that because my file names are too long because I do that on purpose, so they're searchable. But anyway, it's just... I get it, William, and I agree with everyone. Finder is more powerful. It's a better system, but that interface hurts me. I like the simplicity of files.
Okay, the only thing I'm going to agree with you there is if you haven't done anything else on it, when you do any save, particularly in an Apple app, the default is to just have this one little line and a drop-down arrow, like you said. And I have had so many people ask me, how do I move things around? But once you click that drop-down, once you've chosen other at the bottom, when I do exactly what you do, I finish an image in Pixelmator Pro. I can't even remember the controls for it. It's things like Command-E to export, hit return, done. It's gone to the folder I want and in the format I want.
Fair enough.
That's
It's a setup thing. I need to do that. And honestly, I agree. Like, I could probably have a better system, but also I'm not exporting to the same location every time because we have an organized image directory where I'm putting, here's an iPhone image in the iPhone folder that it goes in. I can't really do that. So it's not that Finder's not bad. It's just I've really found that Files' system for interfacing with the file system is much nicer. But I think it's nice in its simplicity.
I don't find it simple. I find it, it's not any more a royal pain, but it's a pain. I was working on a book project and I needed to take an original draft and make a copy of it and move that copy somewhere else. And I could have just done it in moments on the Mac, but instead I had to go through quite a few hoops to find the right spot, to copy the right thing, to duplicate the right thing, to save it into the right place for it. Whereas on the Mac, when you go even jumping between different places, I can't remember if this is default or because I use default folder X, but the ability to zoom around between your recent folders and new ones and things is close to infinitely faster on the Mac.
Absolutely, because the Mac exposes the file hierarchy in the UI, whereas iOS does, but it's not consistent. But there's other products that came out. My mom actually, I made her get a new phone because she had the iPhone 13. And so she got the
We're parking
iPhone
the Mac
17e.
iPad. I know we're going to come back to this. Okay. In fact, actually, we're going to we'll do it visually in some way. I don't know how. We'll print out chapters out and show the different things. But okay, I did actually want to ask you about. Sorry, you said your mum now has a new device, new phone.
Yeah, and I'm going to be doing the Neo review, so stay tuned for all that. I'm going to have a lot of thoughts about this and iPadOS and all that. But
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Mom got the pink iPhone 17e, and it's the same size and shape as her iPhone 13, except it doesn't have a camera bump. It has one camera.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the design is much nicer. The biggest difference, especially in photos, the Apple logo is different.
No?
Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it. I need to go touch it and look at it later because I didn't deliberately do this, but the iPhone 13 has that black glossy Apple logo. This one is not that.
Oh, right.
It's more It's more of has a white sheen and light. I'm not sure if they did a different kind of glass or if it's an aluminum inset like they did with the Neo. I don't know what's going on there, but I need to go look at it because it's very hard to show up in photos. Thinking about it, I think it's more of an aluminum emboss kind of situation.
Well, something actually you should make sure your mum knows. Apple has published repair manuals for the iPhone 17e and the MacBook Neo and a couple of others. So at the moment, you can't actually do anything because the parts and the tools are not available, but presumably they're coming soon on the heels of these. So if she wants to spend a few £100 and work in a white room with tweezers or whatever they're called, she might be able to examine that.
So funny you mentioned that. She grew up with her father running an electronics repair store, and she helped repair transistor radios and tube televisions. So maybe she'll be in the market to fix her iPhone if she needs to. There you go.
Well, she says that she's able to. My thought was just, I think it's good that Apple makes all these things available, and I'm sure they do it out of the goodness of their hearts and not because of regulatory pressure breathing down the neck. But it's hundreds of dollars, really intensely complex work. And I just feel like it's an advert for, take this to an Apple store and get them to fix it instead of you breaking it. But okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still think it's better to just let Apple do it. But if you're a hobbyist or a repair shop, obviously it's good that these tools are available and these devices seemingly are easier to repair than ever. There's nothing really to say about iPhone 17e. It's an iPhone. It runs iOS.
Yeah.
It has an action button. It doesn't have camera control. The camera takes nice pictures for a person who doesn't really think about photography. They just point, they shoot, they have a photo. It does a great job at that. Beautiful FaceTime calls, good signal, connects to Wi-Fi and gets you the Facebook app. There's really not much going on here, and that's the point. And it's a good phone. This is her not last device, but it's one of her last remaining Lightning device upgrades.
Oh, right.
She the last thing she has in her home is the Siri remote that is still Lightning connected.
Oh, right. So. The same here. Yeah. Actually, one thing that surprised me there, I should have known it, I didn't consciously think about it, the fact that the iPhone 17 doesn't have a camera control button. I realised I would actually miss that now. When did that happen? When did I get used to that button? But, oh well.
So I did not get a Studio Display XDR, MacBook Pro, or MacBook Air, or an iPad Air, and that's the remainder of the list of devices. Is there anything... We covered those pretty extensively last week.
So,
is there anything...
Because you already have a Studio Display, am I right?
Yes, and the more I hear about the 2026 version, the more I realize I definitely don't need the 2026 version, because, William, I don't know if you know this or realized it, they didn't change the display part of the display.
Yes.
It's the same display, identical.
Yes.
Maybe a nit change, I don't know, but it's identical.
The argument I heard was, okay, it hasn't changed. It's the same panel from, I can't remember how many years ago it is.
10 years ago.
10 years. But few or no other places have matched it until quite recently. So, okay.
I'm going to say that if this was the stock market, I made a good investment in the first model that will continue to work great for the next 5 years until the next one comes.
Right. I didn't.
XDR, though, meh. Just don't need it. I don't care about 120 hertz. I don't care, William. I just don't care.
Yeah, but don't you want it? Really?
Oh, no. The minute Apple releases something that is not another mortgage, I would love an OLED 120 hertz studio display that is not this model. Mini LED and more dimming zones is not that important to me. I mean, I would notice a difference, absolutely. That new display that the MacBooks got was beautiful when they changed from one to the other. This is clearly going to be a better display. Not denying that. I don't need it. So
I'm just going to have to avoid Apple stores again. I love my 49-inch wide monitor, and the resolution is much better than whatever junk I had before, but still, it's as nothing compared to any of these. So,
TVs look better in the store.
Oh, that's true. Yes. Okay. I want, because you mentioned earlier, I do want to move on very quick things. There have been little bits of rumours about the MacBook. I was going to say the MacBook Pro with OLED, and we've said often that that's now due end of this year. Analyst Meng Chi Kuo says, well, it might be early next year, but around that kind of time. I don't want to spend any time or put too much credence on this, but just before we started talking, there was a rumor that actually it wouldn't be called the MacBook Pro anymore, that it would be the MacBook Ultra, and that in fact there would be AirPods Ultra and an iPhone Ultra. Now, I think this is just someone guessing, but the iPhone Ultra is allegedly what everyone else would have called the iPhone Fold. And just that little bit, you know the way Apple likes to not go for the obvious name sometimes, I can imagine them not calling it an iPhone Fold. But you said a couple of whiles ago, you made a really convincing point that by now we should be seeing parts, component supply chain leaks. And we're not, but we're getting little whispers of things. So Chaz, another CAD drawing of it and things. You've seen that. Do you think this is just somebody mocking it up from what they think? Was it real?
Well, so first off, the Ultra name is a name that won't die. We've been hearing rumors about this since I think also 2019. It's been around as long as the iPhone Fold rumors. And Fold is just a name we chose to designate the device, but Apple can name it whatever it wants. It could be iPhone Neo Ultra. Who knows? iPhone Plus Plus.
iPhone William, I'd wear that. Yes, okay.
Yeah, iPhone Division. So the whole thing here is, I know how this is going to come off, as this is Wesley denying a rumor. Okay. But go back and look at the renders and the 3D print models going around in December and tell me that this is not the same thing.
Okay. But
because
doesn't that mean it's right, or does it help suggest it?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Maybe so a CAD drawing is specifically for a CAD-based design platform, right? Computer-aided design. It's not, technically a part of any specific app or anything. But from my recognition, and I went back and looked at these, even Sonny Dickinson, who I believe is the one who shared this, who's the one who gets dummy units, the ones he shared before have clear telltale signs of being a CAD program style output. This one, maybe it's a different layer. I don't use the program, so I don't know. Someone can correct me. But this one looks different. It's missing the usual, there's these, I don't know what to call them, but sight lines and measure lines that go around the edges of every contour in CAD.
Oh, yeah.
It might have been a quote unquote final rendering layer or a preview layer or something. But this is also just what a preview file looks like in a 3D printer application.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
So and people were 3D printing these things in December. Someone made a rendered 3D art style of this thing in December. I think this is just more of that file going around, because there's still conflicting rumors. Some are saying that this squat design is not the one that's coming, and yet this is the quote-unquote CAD that we got. But even then, it was just one odd view from one angle, which is almost the identical view of the fully rendered version that we saw in December. So I'm very, very skeptical of this. And again, when this happened with the iPhone Air last year, we got 3 more leakers within days of each other sharing similar CAD designs. This is still a singular link point with related previous images. I am not convinced until I see some definitive proof, especially because a CAD is one thing, because Apple's clearly designing these things internally. So I'm not going to say this isn't even not an Apple CAD. It could be, but it's still not a part. And William, if this thing is coming out in September, October, it would already be in pre-production. There would be parts available. Things would be leaking. Apple has never been watertight on this stuff. And on a device this big, this different, there's no way we wouldn't get a camera module or a hinge or something. and we've seen none of it. It's very surprising.
Well, not to feed into other things we've talked about in the past, but I can reveal the images that Sonny Dixon shared are screenshots from some app, because you can see your toolbars in it and stuff. And I asked AI what app would be that. And AI said, I don't know. No, first it said it was Affinity Designer, but I know Affinity Designer, so I said, no, it isn't. And it went, you're right, I don't know. And then it asked me, what is it? So, you know.
AI's the future.
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking here a little bit. I could go off on one a little bit.
Yes.
We will find out reasonably soon enough. But we are also hearing rumours of prices, and basically all they're saying is incredibly expensive. But we've heard that before. Maybe this is another year I don't upgrade, but we'll see. There's something else I mentioned earlier about asking you about things. There's a great line in The Simpsons where Lisa Simpson says that she understands every word in a sentence and yet still doesn't know what it means. I read in Apple Insider that X-Plane 12 is using NVIDIA Cloud XR6 in Vision OS 26.4. I understand every syllable. What is X-Plane 12? It's like a 3D printing woodworking planer thing.
No. So, okay, we can get this done quick because we're going to close up. I don't even know where we are on time at this point. But X-Plane 12 is, I would call it a game, but I think some people might take offense to that. It's a simulator. It's a flight simulator.
Oh, okay.
Pilots use it for real life, to train and practice. You can actually get this program, app, game, whatever, on a sophisticated piece of computer, like a couple $1,000 Windows computer, or even a Mac. It has a Mac application. You can run it, and you can take a flight in a cockpit that is designed to look identical to the cockpit you would be sitting in, and fly it in real time from one place to another. And you can do this in virtual reality too. And they even sell $1,300 physical objects, like the dial switches and the what's the thing you hold on to move?
Joystick? No, the collector?
Oh, there's a word for it in planes. Anyway, the guy that does stuff. Anyway, moving on. You can buy physical hardware to pair with this VR environment.
Okay.
And you can, if you really wanted to, I would say, systems like Delta maybe would build entire mock-ups of a cockpit and run this software as virtual screens and let you interact with the software through these hardware peripherals. Like, this is a legit system, but also people just buy it so they can fly planes and mess around. So,
okay.
Anyway, X-Plane is getting support for NVIDIA's
thinking.
I forget,
Cloud
XR.
XR6.
Yeah,
come on,
Cloud XR.
Get
Cloud
up with the terms there. Yeah.
So this is Apple Vision Pro is getting Cloud XR support in 26.4, which is coming out any day, and that enables this to run via a cloud compute that you probably own. This is where I got mixed up. At first I thought it was a GeForce Now situation where you're basically playing the game through a rented server, but no, you're bringing your own computer, I believe, running the software already, which is
Right.
$60 to $100, something like that. And then you're streaming it to the Vision Pro in high fidelity, theoretically, so you can use it. And the Vision Pro has mixed reality. So now they're going to coordinate the mixed reality with the physical props in the Vision Pro and let you fly the cockpits as if you were sitting in the pilot's chair.
Okay. I think what I've learnt today is the only thing we've mentioned that I can possibly afford is David Pogue's book. So there we go. If someone actually wants to, send you a camera component from the iPhone Fold, how would they reach you to do it?
Well, first, I'll say, just in general for this topic, I think this is interesting. This Cloud XR business is going to be really cool for Vision Pro. That alone is going to be huge for a lot of enterprise industry for Apple Vision Pro. But I do think this might also open the door to some interesting gaming situations. But moving on. People can reach me, Wes at AppleInsider.com. I'm also Hilly Tech on Blue Sky. I am moving this week and been very busy, and I might be busy through next week. So my blog's on a bit of a pause. I might try to get a Friday newsletter out as usual, but otherwise I haven't been doing my dailies. But that's, again, I'm so busy. This is so much work to move, William. But I'm very excited to make this empty room into an office, pack the walls and floors with stuff so it no longer echoes. And hopefully by next week, we will have a proper podcast production. I really do apologize again if this is not up to our usual quality, but the rest of the show is still there. So
it's funny, isn't it? Right now, I want to empty my overpacked office and sort things out. Maybe we can swap. That'll do. I should say, if anybody would want to reach me, I'm on William at AppleInsider.com, and I'm not moving, so I'm just sitting here around waiting for human company. And I'm also on YouTube. It's 58 Keys. We're in the middle of a month to do with Scrivener, and actually, about a week and a half's time, there's going to be a live episode answering questions about Scrivener, and I am begging people to slip me the questions early so I can look them up, and you seem very well informed, but that's that. I should say, thank you very much to our roster of sponsors this week. Clean My Mac by MacPaw, Squarespace, Tempo and Nordstella. Thank you too for listening. And if you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, well, hang on, there's more. If you're not an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, just forget I said anything. And we'll talk again next week.
Yep, talk soon.